Hello, yet again. Recently, the new Vice President of the United States, JD Vance, has been talking about Europe, and a lot of people in the UK and Europe are upset about some of the things he's saying. But I gotta tell you, I fully agree with everything he said in terms of freedom of speech. Now, the comment about, the first Islamist state to have nuclear weapons being the UK, maybe it's a little exaggerated. But from an American standpoint, where everything's hyper exaggerated, hyper capitalistic, he's not fully wrong. He's not as wrong as a lot of these newscasters and people on Twitter and Facebook want him to be. When he's talking about freedom of speech and things like that, I fully agree with him. I've said it a few times. I've worked 3 months in the United States of America. I've paid to the IRS because I worked abroad there. I worked in North Dakota, which I think is a flipping great state. There's lots of oil there. There's lots of jobs in the oil industry there. And I have a social security number. I'm not a citizen. I'm far from it. But I loved it there. The freedom was insane. Obviously, as a visitor with little money at the time, I didn't have a car. If you don't have a car in the town I was in, near Williston, you basically rely on others, and not everyone wants to drive the guy with a funny accent around. But the freedom was insane. The food could be a bit better. The barbecue, best food I've ever had. American barbecue, best food I've ever had. Brisket, amazing. I'm digressing. But the freedom there. I walked into a Walmart. I could hold a pew-pew. I got to use funny language. Blame YouTube. Over here, you haven't got that privilege or that honor or that trust. Debates about the Second Amendment, not relevant to this video. But you could say what you want. You could do what you want. There was a guy who'd park outside the Walmart with spray paint on his white van. These yellow "Don't Tread on Me" flags. Talking about certain child-attracted ideology members within the education system teaching your kids this, and they're controlled by Satan, and he'd just sit there. And over here, you'd have police come up to you and say, "Oh, sorry, sir, you can't have that there." Now, come on, I'm digressing a little bit with personal experience, but when it comes to freedom of speech, America fully has that. I think, as you've seen over here, the riots last July, obviously the people that were setting fire to things and smashing things up and attacking people on both sides, full force of the law should be there. People like Wayne O'Rourke, who simply was honest about Southport and gave his opinion about Southport. He's locked up for 3 years. Probably will only serve a year and a half because of how the UK system works. But that man should not be in prison. That poor guy, who unfortunately took his own life because of the threats he had in prison. All he did was speak his mind. I think there was someone who got arrested for shouting at a police dog. So from an American standpoint, you read about these articles and these stories from news sources, which is how they know about it. They can't exactly teleport. They're not telepathic either. He has every right to be like, especially as someone whose ancestry probably goes back to our island and our continent, it being America, to say freedom of speech is under attack in Europe. And when you're the leader of the free world and the powerhouse of the West, I think talking to your Western allies is a good thing. To let it just, normalize it, let it happen until it happens to you, I think would be dangerous. There's that saying, it's like, I wasn't this, so I didn't say anything. I wasn't this, so I didn't say anything. I wasn't this, so I didn't say anything. And then they came for me. I don't know what the exact quote is, but I've seen it around. People use it all the time on left, right, centre, you name it. JD Vance is not a bad person for saying that free speech is under attack in Europe and the UK, and that it's a problem. And the fact he wants to talk to our Prime Minister about it is a good thing. I have no complaints about it. If it was Obama doing it, I'm sure more people would be happy with what he's saying. But what Obama did is come over and tell us how to vote in our referendum. You want to talk election interference. During the Brexit campaign, David Cameron invited Obama down to basically tell people, vote Remain, or you're at the back of the queue and we don't care about you. Not his exact words, but I'll play the clip.
Maybe some point down the line there might be a UK-US trade agreement, but it's not going to happen anytime soon because our focus is in negotiating with a big bloc, the European Union, to get a trade agreement done. And UK is going to be in the back of the queue, not because we don't have a special relationship, but because.
So I want to watch through, as I've done in recent videos, what I feel about the statements that are so controversial to certain Brits and Europeans.
This conference, of course, to discuss security, and normally we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
An opinion, humble, respectful. What's the problem? Let's find out.
Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team.
The team of the West. America is an ally. We should be honored that we are theirs. And so far, this man has been nothing but respectful. I don't know if I'm on another planet or I'm simply a bit loco. Muy loco. So far, so good.
We must do more than talk about democratic values. We must live them.
Yes. Is this not what every Western nation fights for? But they're upset when JD Vance speaks on it.
Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War.
Да. Это хорошо.
They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder.
That's very true. Salman Momika, I believe his name was. I followed him on Twitter and X. This man got famous. He was an Iraqi asylum seeker within Sweden, and he was begging, I believe, I know for a fact America, I'm not sure about Britain, but he was asking to be put somewhere safe, because when you look at Svenska Sweden, when you look at that and you see what's going on there, it's shocking. Malmö, it used to be such a peaceful place. Stockholm, I mean, Sweden, they're known for lip pillows, beautiful blonde women, good manners, young lean. but now it's full of pew-pews and violence and lives being taken away and open borders. When you look at Sweden, the past decade or two, it is horrible. Especially the R cases. I have to be very careful with my words. I hope you guys are following what I'm saying. The R cases, it's disgusting when you look at the graphs about what's happened in the recent years. So far, this man has spoke nothing but the truth. We're about just over halfway through the video.
And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law.
When you are telling people, and I have a Scottish name, by the way, when you are telling people you cannot pray privately within your own domicile, this is worse than, say, I mean, this is North Korea-esque stuff. I don't mean to be exaggerative, but when you are telling people you may not pray within your own home against something we want to enforce and enact, that goes against your beliefs, it's shocking, it's ungovernable. It implores people to report on your neighbor. Oh, I saw my neighbor praying. They were praying, hoping that people didn't cancel their pregnancy. And I saw them do it through the window. Knock, knock, we're the police. Come with us. It's beyond me.
Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizen suspected guilty of thought crime.
There we go.
In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth.
my original Instagram, my personal Instagram, was actually suspended and deactivated for impersonation. And it was literally me, my name, me and my profile picture, giving an opinion about this topic, and they said I was impersonating myself and I couldn't appeal the suspension and then deactivation. So my original Instagram that I used personally, I lost for giving my opinion in 2021, I believe. So he's speaking the truth, an American company enforcing this on a British citizen.
So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
That can't be the video people are raving about, because I've got nothing to add to that. I agree with everything he said. No comment. He was spot on.